Hi, my name is Ian O'Grady, and today I'll be discussing sexual assault, more accurately, the horrible reality of sexual assault in our society today. Sexual violence can come in many different forms. These forms of sexual assault can include unwanted sexual touching, sexual contact with minors, exposing one's genitals or naked body to others without consent, sexual exploitation and trafficking, watching someone engage in private acts without their knowledge or permission, or the one we hear most about, rape, a type of sexual violence defined as forced through alcoholic or drug facilitated, potentially anal, oral, or vaginal penetration. When it comes to sexual violence, an important topic to address is consent. Most, if not all, of the previously described forms of sexual violence involve a lack of consent. Consent is an agreement between participants to engage in a sexual activity. Consent must be freely given and informed, and can be revoked at any time. To see the true horror of sexual assault and how many people it's impacting, all one has to do is look at any of the resources provided by groups or institutions championing against sexual violence. Out of rape victims, 1 in 3 female victims were raped between the ages of 11 and 17 years old. 1 in 8 female victims reported that their rape occurred before the age of 10. Out of male victims who were reported raped, 1 in 4 male victims reported that it occurred between the ages of 11 and 17 years old. 1 in 4 male victims reported that it occurred before the age of 10. More than 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men experienced sexual violence involving physical contact during their lifetimes. Almost 1 out of every 5 women and 1 out of every 38 men experienced completed or attempted rape in their lifetime. Then comes the fact that I found most appalling. Nearly 23 million women have been victims of completed or attempted rape at some point in their life. When it comes to the consequences of sexual assault, victims can end up paying both monetary prices as well as their sanity. The average monetary cost towards a rape victim is $122,461. This includes medical costs, loss of productivity, criminal justice activities, and other costs. There can be a psychological cost as well, as I previously mentioned, though this ranges from case to case and can depend on aspects like assault characteristics, environmental conditions, survivor attributes, and availability of social support and resources. Childhood sexual trauma can cause post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, suicide, alcohol problems, and eating disorders. Adulthood sexual trauma is more complicated and is associated with both long and short-term issues. These short-term issues include shock, fear, anxiety, confusion, and withdrawal, while the long-term issues include PTSD, depression, eating disorders, sexual dysfunction, alcohol and illicit drug use, non-fatal suicidal behavior, and suicidal threats. To help gauge the risk or likelihood that someone would commit a sexual violent act, the CDC has provided a list of risk factors. Individual risk factors include alcohol and drug use, delinquency, a lack of empathy, general aggressive and acceptance of violence, early sexual initiation, coercive sexual fantasies, preferences for impersonal sex and sexual risk-taking, exposure to sexually explicit media, hostility towards women, adherence to its traditional gender role norms, hypermasculinity, suicidal behavior, and prior sexual victimization or perpetration. The relationship risk factors include family environment characterized by physical violence and conflict, childhood history of physical, sexual, or emotional abuse, emotionally unsupportive family environment, poor parent-child relationship, particularly with fathers, association with sexually aggressive, hypermasculine, and delinquent peers, and involvement in a violent or abusive intimate relationship. The community risk factors are things like poverty, a lack of employment opportunities, lack of institutional support from police and judicial systems, general tolerance of sexual violence within the community, and weak community sanctions against sexually violent perpetrators. These societal risk factors are heavily influenced by social norms, like those that support sexual violence, those that support male superiority and sexual entitlement, and those that maintain women's inferiority and sexual submissiveness. Other societal risk factors include weak laws and policies related to sexual violence and gender equity, and high levels of crime and other forms of violence. An important resource in the battle with sexual violence is RPE, which is Rape Prevention and Education Program. The Rape Prevention and Education Program is a CDC program with the goal of primary prevention. This means stopping sexual violence before it begins. RPE works to prevent sexual violence by providing funding to state health departments. These recipient programs in the health departments work with sexual violence coalitions, education institutions, rape crisis centers, and community organizations to aid in sexual violence prevention. RPE provides literature and resources advising in areas of sexual violence as well. One of these resources is a technical package called Stop SV. This technical package was created by the CDC's Division of Violence Prevention. The CDC website describes the technical package as a compilation of core set strategies to achieve and sustain substantial reductions in a specific risk factor or outcome. It focuses on ideas of strategy, approach, and evidence to diminish the chance of sexual violence. STOP SV is an acronym, with each letter representing something. The S stands for social norms. More accurately, promote social norms that protect against violence. This includes bystander approaches and mobilizing men and boys as allies. The T is for teach, as in teach skills to prevent sexual violence. This includes social emotional learning, teaching healthy, safe dating, and intimate relationship skills to teens, promoting healthy sexuality, and empowerment-based training. The O is for opportunities. Provide opportunities to empower and support girls and women, strengthening economic supports for women and families, and strengthening leadership and support opportunities for girls. The P is for protective, in create protective environments, improving safety and monitoring schools, establishing and consistently applying workplace policies, addressing community level risks through environmental approaches. These are all ways to create protective environments. And the SV is for support victims, as in support victims, survivors to lessen harm. This is victim-centered services, treatment for victims of sexual violence, and treatment for at-risk children and families to prevent the problem of behavior, including sex offending. When it comes to dealing with the sexual violence after the fact, too often these sexual assaults are swept under the rug and the crime is not reported, or even worse, the victim does not receive proper care or treatment. There are very positive resources provided by the CDC and the government that can help people in this situation and in need. The Women's Office of Health is a CDC resource which, as it describes, provides a forum for collaboration and works within and outside the agency to raise awareness of women's health and to promote activities that will promote the health and safety of women. The U.S. Department of Justice also provides two helpful resources. One is the Office of Victims of Crimes, and a description for this is given as the OVC was established in 1984 to oversee diverse programs that help victims of crime. OVC provides funding to state victim assistance and compensation programs, the lifeline services that help victims to heal. The other government agency is the U.S. Department of Justice Office of Violence Against Women. The Office of Violence Against Women works with victims advocates and law enforcement to develop grant programs that support a wide range of services, including advocacy, emergency shelters, law enforcement protection, and legal aid for victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking. That's it for my report on this very serious issue. If you have anything interesting to add, if you'd like to leave a comment, or really just discuss this issue more so, please do so in the comment section below.